Booker and Roberts, I think that might be a top 3 guard tandem in all of college football. Talk to me about the tackle position. What are we seeing there? How is the emergence of depth at the tackle position looking?
Well, I think from this particular scrimmage, you had Elijah Pritchett at left tackle, and then on the right tackle position, you had Wilcom Formby. And I think there's some other tackles who are also surfacing as players that are vying for that right tackle position. I think that when you look to Alabama's offensive line, I don't really have a lot of question marks as of today, besides, the Parker Brailsford deal. Now, it was really good to hear from Coach Kalen DeBoer, and I'm glad that he addressed that regarding that he is staying at Alabama. So just like you said, the competition, I think there's a lot of competition within different positions, probably outside of Jaden Roberts and outside of Tyler Booker. But I think Elijah Pritchett, I think the tackle position is open, considering the fact that we all know that Caden Proctor is coming back to Alabama. And where will he fit in? And as we've been talking about, do you think he'll be an immediate starter when he comes back in? Is he going to have to work for that spot? So when you look to Elijah Pritchett, when you look to Caden Proctor, those are some names at that tackle position. And then you also have, McVay, you have Wilcom Formby, who's really making a push at the right tackle position. So I feel good about it, but we felt good about Alabama's offensive line going into last year. I will say that what makes me more confident about this offensive line is I felt that I was a little bit hesitant when we were starting to talk about these tremendous size, these weights that these players has added. Like J.C. Latham added like 30 pounds. Caden Proctor looked overweight as well. And I think that made them slow against faster teams. I don't necessarily think that's the issue this year. I mean, when we saw Jaden Roberts just recently, he looks really good. Looks like he's actually lost weight. James Brockenmeyer said that he's up to 300 pounds. I don't even know if he's 300 pounds. Didn't look like it, but I mean, how many times can you look at someone and say 300 pounds? So, and I think Tyler Booker looks really good as well. I don't know where Caden Proctor stands, but I felt, and you can, ask the undefeated as well. I felt that he played, overweight, and that kind of, made him slow, kind of facing some very talented edge rushers.
Yeah, and well, speaking of that, you walked me right into the second question, right? This is one of those Blake Griffin, Chris Paul moments where the oop was just thrown, and now it's about to get thrown down. I was told 2 names to watch in terms of guys that were just quote, unblockable. Quay Russo, I heard that he was unblockable. But Keon Keeley, I had someone kind of telling me like, hey, that guy was a straight up menace to where there was a series where he had a sack, a pressure, and a sack, or something along that lines where he was just causing havoc. What are we looking at in terms of pass rushers, in terms of this defensive front?
Well, I mean, Quay Russo, I'm really glad that you brought him up. And we've been talking about him this springtime. And I think it was just he waited. He was being patient for his spot. There's a lot of guys like Keanu Cole. There's, Q Rob. There's other guys that are going to work at that spot. But to hear Quay Russo have a really good scrimmage, I think was really promising. Don't forget about Yanze Pierre, who recently, from Kane Womack said that he looks really good as well and just kind of a physical specimen. So if you're patient within this system, you're going to get an opportunity to really showcase your abilities. And I think that's kind of the case with Quay. I think that Keon Keeley, hearing good things about him is really great news. Probably some of the biggest news that come out at scrimmage, because I think people seeing that he was rotating from, an edge to, down lineman or whatever. They maybe put that in that Keon Keeley didn't want that and that he was going to hit the transfer portal, right? If we look at receipts, a couple weeks ago, people will be like, Keon Keeley's going to hit the transfer portal. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think they looked at his body type. I'm serious. I stood right next to him at the Rose Bowl. He looked like he was going right to the NFL after that game. So I think he has a lot of athletic ability, and to hear him having a really good scrimmage, I think that probably made my ears perk up, probably more than anything in this scrimmage, to be honest, outside of the Caleb Odom touchdown catch, because Kalen DeBoer was asked straight up, like, what stood out when you look back to that scrimmage, and he quickly went to that Caleb Odom's touchdown pass. So to hear that Keon Keeley's having a really good showing in a scrimmage, the second scrimmage, which is always better than that first one, made my ears perk up. And I think when you look to some of those other guys who are starting to make waves, just because we didn't hear like a Yanze Pierre doesn't mean that they're not performing at a high level, because I think you're going to see a lot of those guys come August, and there's still a lot of competition going forward. But don't forget about Keon Cote too. He's having a really good spring.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I've talked to you extensively about how that's a position group I'm really excited about. even with the losses of Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, I still think it's one of the most loaded rooms in all of college football. Can't wait to see that. Now, before we get to the conversation I know everybody wants us to have, of course, I have to, we got to give them hook, line, and sinker. We got to build up the anticipation. Let's talk about this defensive back room, right? Because there were a lot of touchdowns thrown in this game. But at the same time, from what I understand is for the most part, the defensive back play, like they're there. They're there. It was just some great throws from what I've been told. And we saw that video of the Ty Simpson throw to Kobe Prentice that was an absolute dime.
Yeah, I loved it.
That was a dime. But then we heard the Caleb Odom going up, 10, 11 feet in the air to catch that ball. I mean, they said that was insane.
Yeah.
What do we need to know about this defensive back room? Keon Sabb is going to be a problem. Red Morgan really emerging. What about these cornerbacks, though? What do you think we need to look at there?
Well, it's been a little bit quiet on the Damani Jackson front, and I wouldn't, assess that with something that is negative. And I think you brought up the really big names that I was going to talk about. Keon Sabb having a really good impact in this last scrimmage, and then freshman Red Morgan. I mean, Smook has been talking about him for quite some time, and I think he's been probably one of the most steady freshmen. And it was interesting because he was a freshman that we didn't really highlight, or you didn't see a lot of notoriety kind of going into spring. A lot of people, and look, a lot of people were talking about Jalen Mbakwe or Zay Mincy or somebody else, whatever the case is. There's a lot. You could get overshadowed very easily if you're a freshman within this class. But to see Red Morgan performing at this high of a level is really promising. I think that I want to continue to, outside of the quarterbacks, I want to see how Damani Jackson looks going against these wide receivers. It's going to be a tall task for any of these wide receivers, but I want to see how Damani Jackson plays. I already kind of know that Keon Sabb is going to be that guy. I think he's probably going to have the biggest impact of anybody within the secondary group this coming season. Malachi Moore, steady. Devontae Smith, steady. Those guys, we're accustomed to them. I mean, Devontae Smith didn't get an opportunity last year because of an injury, but Malachi Moore is going to be that guy. So I want to see how other younger guys compete at that corner spot, whether it's a Zay Mincy, whether it is a Jalen Mbakwe, usually one of those underrated guys like a Peyton Woodyard. I could see him having like an interception or something like that. Speak it into existence. So there's a lot going on, but I think Red Morgan and Keon Sabb has certainly turned heads. So I'm glad you brought those up because Keon Sabb is that guy. And there's a lot of guys that you can't forget about. And I think they're going to showcase their abilities come A-Day.
Yeah, Coach Smook in the chat saying Peyton Woodward showed some good IQ. Yeah, I heard good things about him. I will say I was told that Damani Jackson had some plays where he's really showcasing the physicality.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, yeah, you are a physical, just an anomaly almost. We got to remember, guys, what is he, 6'1", 200?
Yeah.
And he ran a 10.25 100-meter dash in California.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a different type of athlete, but some bad habits picked up at USC. That's not relegated to him. Watch that USC defense last year. If you can stomach it. And we'll see if you can stomach it because I certainly couldn't. Moving on to the conversation that everybody wants us to have, Kyle. I've heard nothing but good things about the quarterback play in this game. Not only from Jalen Milroe, a lot of talk about Ty Simpson, that he really was on fire this game. Austin Mack doing his thing, Dylan Lonergan doing his thing. What do the people need to know about the quarterback situation at Alabama top to bottom?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great quarterback room with a lot of competition. And I think Ty was a quarterback that had the best day at that scrimmage. He had two really nice touchdown passes, one to Kobe Prentice, one to Emmanuel Henderson, as we've spoken about. Jalen Milroe had a touchdown to C.J. Dupree and also had a rushing touchdown. When Coach Kalen DeBoer addresses the media and he talks about his quarterback room, he clearly says that Jalen Milroe is a starter. Now, with that said, this was, and you can ask Coach Smook as well, this was a type of scrimmage where there's a lot of guys with a lot of reps. And one of the things that Coach Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan want to happen is have their quarterbacks work with the first team so they get that type of speed and acclimated to this new style of offense. Didn't hear a lot about Austin Mack from this particular scrimmage, but in scrimmage one, he really shined. Dylan Lonergan, as you said, had that touchdown throw to Caleb Odom, where Caleb Odom went up into the air and made this incredible play. Ty Simpson, I'm not surprised to hear that he continues to do really well. And I'm not trying to make this out to be like this ultra quarterback battle. I think that if there is a quarterback battle or there is a time for another quarterback, that'll be up to Coach Kalen DeBoer during the season. But Jalen Milroe is your starter, 1,000,000%. I think when the bullets start flying and a guy who can actually, win high-profile games, Jalen Milroe has proven that he can do that. But, the quarterback position, the backup is always better. We've seen it time and time again. This year is no different. Jalen Milroe, all eyes are on him. Every single throw that Jalen Milroe makes is going to be under the microscope. A lot of people are pulling for Ty Simpson. I don't think there's anything wrong with having 1, 2, 3 quality quarterbacks. It's a gauntlet of a season. It's the most important position in college football. Alabama is lucky to have Jalen Milroe. Alabama is lucky to have Ty Simpson, lucky to have Dylan Leonard again, and can't wait to see Austin Mack continue to develop. I think that quarterback room overall has been disserviced over the last couple of years because of Bill O'Brien and Tommy Rees. And it's time that we address that, and I think that has certainly contributed to these quarterbacks not being where they should at this point in time, being that they've been here for several seasons. And I think a lot has to do with the fact that they've had 2 offensive coordinators and a lack of quarterback coach to develop them properly.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's kind of been a take, Kyle, that I have famously had for months now. Whenever even Jalen Milroe is struggling, and I was like, guys, Bama doesn't have a quarterback developer. I mean, I have been banging my fist on the table. You and I have talked about this since November. We talked about this on Bleacher Report, and I asked you, when was the last guy and that's where the whole, was it AJ Milwee and Sark? Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle and I were having this conversation before the season ended on Bleacher Report in November.
Yeah.
Now, to get to this donation right here, Adam Lamparello, thank you very much for the $10. He says, Ty, I think Ty Simpson should start. Why would you start Milroe over him? So I have a few points to this. 1, Milroe has the experience, right? 2, now Milroe has a quarterback coach that he can really come up to speed. 3, I think Milroe, as athletic as Ty is, and people don't give Ty the credit he's due in terms of the quality of athlete he is, he's a dual threat quarterback. Right? He's not a pocket passer, though he can do that, no doubt about it. He's a dual threat guy. He can take off on you. He can create with his legs. But nobody on this roster can do that at the level that Jalen Milroe can. Right? Nobody on this roster can do it at the level Jalen Milroe can. And 3, I think when you look at this offense, they're going to want to stretch the field. Jalen Milroe has got an absolute cannon. Jalen Milroe, though I don't know what Austin Mack's arm looks like in terms of being able to stretch it, I think Jalen Milroe's got the biggest arm on the team. I mean, that guy can just flick the wrist and that ball launches. He is going to be able to utilize all of those abilities to make this offense really hard to stop. And that's not to say anything negative about Ty Simpson. But in fairness, if we're talking Ty Simpson, he has things he needs to develop on too, much like Jalen Milroe, much like Austin Mack, much like every college quarterback out there. So as long as everybody's developing, I am happy. By the sounds of it, everybody's developing. Yeah. I just think Milroe has the experience. He has a rare ability, and he has got an absolute cannon attached to his body. He can hit every blade of grass on the field.
Here with Ty Hayes from Around the Table Sports. Definitely follow him on his YouTube channel. We appreciate you being here. Ty, does Ty Simpson start at a lot of other programs across the world of college football?
I think so. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
Yeah.
When I praise one quarterback, it is not to take away from another quarterback, right? Like, Kyle, you hit the nail on the head. You said a point just a second ago that I really think needs to be unpacked, and it really needs to be talked about. We are blessed to have not only Milroe, who would start at 99% of colleges, Ty Simpson, who would start at 98% of colleges, Austin Mack, who would find his way on the field at a lot of colleges, and Dylan Lonergan, who would find his way onto the field at a lot of colleges. Ladies and gentlemen, depth is a great thing to have, and Alabama is blessed to have multiple quarterbacks that could go and start and win games. That's a great thing to have. Listen, all the quarterbacks are developing, and that's exactly what you want to hear. This is a great thing to hear.
Before we wrap it up here, Ty, I have to ask you. I'm going to ask the undefeated as well. Who is your offensive MVP prediction for this Saturday. Offensive MVP. Tomorrow we'll do defensive MVP. Who you got?
Ooh, that's a great one. I think I'm going to go Haynes, right? I think the running game is going to be big, but Justice Haynes, I think, is going to be in for a big day. I'm between Bernard, and Odom, because I think Odom might just flat out shock people, but I'm going to stick with Justice Haynes.
Yeah, I've said this earlier. I said this a couple days ago. I'm going to go with Justice Haynes as well. I think when you look to Washington's, offense from last season, you just look to, pass heavy and just kind of air it out. But when you look to Kalen DeBoer and you look to what he's been able to do with running backs, they play such a huge role. And as I alluded to earlier, like, this running back room is absolutely stacked. Justice Haynes is that guy. Just wait. But don't sleep on Jam Miller. Might be a really good option as well. So if you're out there picking your your MVP, Jam Miller might not be a bad choice. So
I'm not mad at it in the slightest.
Right?
No, Jam is severely underrated.
He's so underrated.
Yeah. Who said that? I want to give credit where it is due. Dwight, listen, that is a great take. Jam Miller, very underrated. I also think Richard Young is really underrated. I've always said he's one of those guys that you give an inch, he'll take a mile.
Yeah.
Jam Miller's much the same way. Once again, same argument I just gave for the quarterback room, right? Like, we are blessed to be sitting here and being like, oh, well, what about this other former 5-star? What about this former top 75 player in the nation? Other colleges don't have that luxury, and I'm very excited to see it all play out.
I appreciate it, man. Well, follow Ty. This is Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Live every morning, 9 a.m. We talk Alabama football coverage. If you want to become a fan funder, hit the link that says $2.99 to support the product. We appreciate everybody who has super chatted. We appreciate the sponsors. Ty, do your thing, and Ty will be on from 10 to 10:30, and then you got Coach Smoot coming with it right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. I appreciate you, fam. Thank you so much, Ty. Do your thing, man.